What's the most important resource that you have? If you really thought about this deeply, I think you'd come to the same conclusion that Joey and I did. It's time. In our newest book, What's Without Wall Street, the 3 steps to financial freedom through passive income, we talk about how are we tracking that time? What is the thing that we can do to get more of that time back?
That's right. If you've ever been listening to our podcast and thought, man, it would be amazing if I could take all the things that you guys have learned over the last 10 years and just summarize them, put them in some way to easily digest them and take action, that's what this book is all about. You're not going to want to miss it. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/new book and get your copy today.
Stallion, one of our friends, Sharon Srivatsa, says the number one way to growing your wealth is by owning an operating business. And I've seen this true not only personally, but also with friends, where most people, when they're investing, they're thinking in terms of rate of return. Where when we build businesses, we don't think rate of return, we think multiples of what we invest, right? We think about how can we grow our investment 2, 3, 10x, as you said, as we open this. And I think there's a secret sauce to doing that. Would you like to share exactly what it is?
I would, but before we do, I want to add one more quick little intro of one of the members of our masterminds was at the same event that we were just talking about at Apex Inner Circle Live, which, by the way, if you haven't been to one of those, you need to go right now to apexcoachinggroup.com/ICL for Inner Circle Live. And make sure you're on the list to get into the next one. We typically have a limit, and you don't want to miss out on this. But our mastermind member was telling me, he said, you know what? I already have an operating business. Like my wife and I are in the space where she's an artist. She does books and things of this nature. But what he realized is he's like, there's a need for me to build another business that actually we're not the operators, that we're not the key employees in the business because the business we have is great, but it's not saleable. And he said, why wouldn't I create a business that gives me cash flow today and the ability to have a multiple on the back end? And that's what got him really fired up about the Amazon space. So anyways, just sharing again, another reason why we need to be talking about this topic today is finding the right operator is critical to getting more benefit from the time and energy and money that you're going to put into this.
Okay, Tribe, I'm going to go right to the point here. I said there was secret sauce. Joey gave you a heartwarming story. Thank you, Joey, for taking us down that road. I'm definitely interested in that. But if you're looking to 7 or 10x your passive income approach, potentially, right? Like this isn't for everybody. There is a strategy that we've been using. And we know that our investor DNA, our investor buy box will dictate exactly what we do. So if you have this profile, if your investor DNA says that you love establishing businesses, being a part and being involved in them, that's probably your D and I profiles more than any, then you're going to say this resonates. If you're S or C, maybe you're the ones who would be an operator for these businesses and have other people invest in you. So I think there's a dual-edged sword here. So there's 3 elements I think that help us identify the secret sauce. One is that we don't try to make this up on our own. We understand what makes up an operator in the strategy, and we're going to talk about how we go and get that data. Secondly, we talk about how do we seek out candidates who fit that exact profile, right? We're not guessing. We're actually going to use diagnostic tools that's going to give us the exact inputs we need so that we know every single time before we even start the search who our person is and if they meet it. Otherwise, no phone calls, no meetings. Let's don't waste anybody's time. Let's get to the point. And third, how do we build this out so it's a win-win, right? Because if you're an owner and you have an operator in the business, we need to make sure that everybody's invested in the end game. Everybody has the same goals. Everybody's pulling. We don't have one person in the wagon, another one get pulled behind it. We need everybody making sure that we're getting closer to success, and that's by building a win-win. All right, Sally, let's talk about the first one, roles and responsibilities of being an operator in a strategy. How do you determine, right? No matter what we're talking about, if we're looking at our passive income report right now, there's lots of different ways that we are building businesses and have operators in them. First and foremost, maybe give me an example. Tell me about how we actually determine who would be a good operator for that space.
Great question. And I would point to our short-term rental business, wakeupinbirmingham.com, that we built in 2020. And what we did is we got really interested in the topic. We said, man, this seems like a strategy we need to be doing. But we both knew neither one of us could be the operator. So we started to think, what are the roles and responsibilities of somebody that would be really good at this? And we did that by going to an expert, right? We went to, in this case, a gentleman who teaches the short-term rental arbitrage classes and has a course and all that. And we knew he was going to be the one to train the person that we were going to have as an operator. So I think that's critical. If you don't know about exactly what those roles and responsibilities are, go to somebody who's already been there, already done that, built the same businesses you're trying to build, and they could literally outline for you, this person's going to have to do this day to day. They're going to have to take on this responsibility. And that will then give you, oh, wait a minute, there may be somebody that I know of, or some, let's say, another type of career choice that person has done that may mirror those responsibilities.
Hey,
that's what I say. You got to go to the expert to figure that out.
Well, we interviewed Alex and Layla Hormozi, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even longer, before really a lot of people knew even who they were, right? If you're on Instagram, you probably see Alex. He's a pretty easy figure because of how big he is to notice, but he's a really brilliant guy. And I remember when he was telling us how he was launching his business in the gym space, he's like, I just took the expertise I had being a defense contractor, someone who was like trying to figure out what I needed to do in each space. I would just go ask, who's the top people in this space? Give me a list of 3 to 5 people. Then I would go interview them and say, what is it makes you excellent in what you do? He would just gain the insight of the industry. And he said, after about 3 or 4 meetings, you knew exactly what they possessed so that you knew who to use. But also, if you were trying to get into that space, you would know exactly the things you needed to gain knowledge in. So to your point, it was easy for us because we ran a podcast to know who the experts were. We had interviewed enough people to say, this person was an expert. This is the person who had exactly the training. I think so many times people are so short-sighted that they won't spend the money on the investment of learning the skill, right? They say, well, I'll just hack it. I'll just try to do it. So one of the things is find who your experts are. There's easy ways to do that, as we just said. Secondly, spend the money. Spend the money to learn the skill, learn how to do it. And you as an owner should also go through that training, because if you don't know it, you won't know what to inspect. So if we're sitting here talking about how do we build passive income for us, what is our number one way is we go out and we buy businesses or build businesses, and then we install operators, right? This month, we're sitting here in July of 2020, we brought in a net $55,000 a month for the month of July, right? So I think, hey, why do we have authority to speak on this? Well, we've been doing this for 4 years, and constantly and consistently, we're over $50,000 a month in passive income. And one of the ways that we've done is by building businesses. So when you find who the experts are in the space, you do the training and the expertise so that you have the ability to understand, are they doing the job well? And you might even be able to give tweaks and help improve it. Because there are risks, right, Stallion? There are risks whenever you put operators in the business if you don't have the skill. What would that risk be?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to give one more quick example. We've had a podcast recently on the vending space, getting into micro markets and creating those in different places. Well, what did Russ and I do? We said, man, this is a great idea. I think I like this space. I'd love to learn more. And so what did we do? We went out and we bought the program. We bought from Mike Hoffman's group directly, Vendingpreneurs. And you could actually learn more at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/vending. And we bought his course so that we could learn about it. And now we're literally taking appointments in person at some locations around our city to figure out exactly what it would take to install an operator to run those. So we're learning, what are those possible hangups? How do they need to be prepared to go into a meeting with a property manager at an apartment complex or at a fitness gym or wherever it may be that we're going to place these. But this is how we're investing in the process by buying the course, getting a coach, and then taking the next steps personally to make sure we can then pass that on to somebody else. So it's just another example.
Well, what that does, though, for us, it reduces single point of failure. Too oftentimes, every business has one person that's so key to the business in the event that they don't show up, they go on vacation, they get sick, they get injured, they die, they leave the company, whatever it is, the business fails or has a potential to fail. We can't have that. If we're going to run a true business, we need to be able to have multiple contingency plans. So we can't have one person having all the knowledge. Reason why us as owners cannot possess all the knowledge. There's been plenty of companies over the past. There was a grocery franchise that was here in our local area. There was 3 or 4 brothers that ran that grocery franchise. They were all in one plane. That plane went down. That humongous grocery store business no longer exists as a result. They possess all the intellectual capital. So we cannot have single points of failure in the business. So if you're going to establish a business to put an expert in there, they can't be the only person. You have to gain knowledge, and there needs to be systems that anyone else could come in and take over so that you don't do that. Well, here's one of the keys, though, Stallion, that we need to talk about is, all right, well, I know I need to find out the experts and what they what their roles and responsibility are. I need to do in the training myself so I understand the capacity of what is needed. But then I build out a profile that shows exactly who's going to have success. And in our investing, we call that the investor DNA. But there's lots of tools, right, that we can use this for. Some people love using DISC. Some people love using the Colby Index. One of the things that you and I use a lot is a tool called the Culture Index. We had a guy named Matt White come on the podcast years and years ago. He talked about the different ways that we see the world. Are we autonomous, or do we love to be a team on a team? Do we like to talk out loud, or do we like to be very introverted in our thought process? How fast do we want to go, and how much need for follow through and a willingness to follow a process do we have? All of these things make up the expert in the space that you're in. Everybody has an opportunity to have success in what they already possess. Let's don't try to, turn dogs into racehorses, right? Let's don't try to make somebody what they're not. Let's help people win in the area of success. So
I was just going to add to that, Russ. Here's the thing. The reason why we use an outside tool is because our gut instinct is usually very much biased towards the person that we are like, because we like ourselves, right? We want more people around us like ourselves. But guess what? We aren't necessarily the best operator for the business that we're trying to hire. Or the second thing we do is we're biased towards somebody that we already know and like as a person. Maybe it's a family member. Those things get you into trouble, because just because that person is likable or known by you doesn't mean they have the skill set, the roles and responsibilities that are going to make them successful in that business. I mean, just recently, we talked to a friend of ours who is leaving a business after only 6 months with it. And guess what? From day one, if we looked at his profile, we could have told you he would have never been a good fit for the role he was hired for. And it was because of his profile, exactly what we just talked about.
Yeah, that assessment was not done. So that's what creates failure, is that one, you don't reach out to the experts to understand what an expert in the business would look like, creating a profile that would mirror it, getting the training yourself so that you're not just handing it off to others, because you just can't. I mean, as much as you want this for your spouse, for your kid, for your sibling, for your best friend, as much as you want it for them, and you say, hey, I got money and I'm just going to invest in them. If they don't want it and they're not the right profile, it will never work. They have to want it as much as you do. All right, so that's step number one.
Tribe, listen up. We're entering into the election year. This is the time where people are going to get super fearful. We're going to see businesses start to dry up. We're going to see opportunities, though, pile up for us only if we're prepared.
That's right. You get to choose right now. Will you allow this time frame to negatively affect you and your business and your investments? Or will you be prepared to take advantage of these huge opportunities that come on the backside of this because you're prepared with cash?
Let's get our house in order. If you haven't already maximized the infinite banking concept in your life, here's the chance for you to start learning. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/IBC. Take our free webinar so that you can start getting equipped with the things that you need to know so that you can take action on this looming event.
Step number two is then, how do we find these people, Stallion? Like, Is there just this magic tree of where these amazing operators who meet this profile exist?
No, that is not possible. But I'm going to give you some credit here, Russ, because in the past you've told people, hey, instead of telling people like, hey, I'm an accountant, or I'm a school teacher, or I'm an attorney, or whatever, where people ask you what you do, if you lead off by saying I'm an investor, it's amazing that people will try to find things that will meet that criteria for you. So for instance, this applies when it talks about, finding the right candidates to run an operating business that you're installing. And you have to not necessarily go to the person and say, hey, do you want to go work for me in this job? The best way to do it is to tell that person, hey, who do you know that meets this criteria that may be looking for a better opportunity? So instead of me saying, hey, Russ, would you like to come work for me in this vending machine business that I'm starting? You say, hey, listen, I'm starting a vending machine business and I'm looking for somebody who really loves to operate a business on their own time. They don't want to have to clock in, clock out from a 9 to 5. In fact, they want to have the autonomy to be able to do it at 5 a.m. if it meets their criteria of when they're available. Or maybe it's at 10 p.m. when they are finally off of another job or whatever it may be. The pay is well, and they actually get additional benefits that down the road, we may even be able to share in some equity in the business. Who do you know that fits that criteria? As soon as you dog whistle, that's a term in the marketing world, like you tell people what you're looking for by explaining the character, people will start to solve the problem for you. And that means in your social circles, that means face to face. That means on if you have an audience of any sort, that's how you start to get the word out. What would you add to that, Russ?
Well, I mean, we all have social media, and there's an opportunity for us to reach at minimum 60,000 people with any given post if the post is of value, meaning that we have 250 quote unquote friends on Facebook who has 250 quote unquote friends on Facebook, right? So if you shared it with 250 people that would share it with 250 people, you're reaching what is like 60,000 people. Well, what is it's going to make this interesting is that you're sharing what the win is for the person doing it. Joey started talking about this. Who do you know who looks like this, who would like these sort of upsides? And depending on the thing that you're doing, so Joey and I, if we're looking at our passive income report, we have a land flipping business that we created, that we established, had operators put in it. We had a short-term rental business that we continue to get paid from, even long after we've sold it because we owner finance the business. We're involved in a candle business, right? Like it can go on and on. Like we've had so many different businesses, your Turo business, right? There's so many operators that we've come across and built businesses around them, in addition to our information space and affiliate marketing and all these different areas. Well, whenever you are sharing an opportunity with someone, you're also giving them hopefully an opportunity to win too. This isn't about ownership, employee status. Like every time I go into this, and this leads us into point number 3, is how do we make this a win-win? I want to understand how to give a person, any person who's working with us, an unlimited upside. Because think about this. Like, isn't that probably one of the reasons you're listening to this podcast right now? You're sick of the glass ceiling. You're like, man, there's got to be something better. I'm tired of being the fish inside the fishbowl and not know I'm swimming in water, right? Like I literally want to get outside. I want to be able to have way more freedom with my time, with my location. There's got to be opportunities. Well, everyone has that same need. So how can we build this? So if we're looking, if you're that establisher profile, you love getting involved and engaged, you're probably decent with people. You can share a message concisely, and you can start talking about what makes this a win-win. Think about to the short-term rental business, Joey. One of the things that we did immediately is say, hey, not only do we need to figure out what your income needs are and how do we solve those needs, but also how do we help you learn this so that you can start doing this on your own too. So you can do this for our business, But then there's nothing that prevents you from doing this on your own. Don't you want passive income? Don't you want to start doing this? Of course I do. And what did they do? They started finding other investors who wanted to invest in their deal so that they could operate and make money for themselves in that. And ultimately got to the point where they were like, hey, what would it look like if I were to buy the business from you? Because they had everything they needed at that point. It became a win-win.
That's right. And I think the real big learning here in this particular point is don't assume what people need or what gets people excited, right? You may be very driven by money, but somebody else that would be operating your business might be more driven by consistency and steadiness and a known outcome. Like you may be like, hey, I'd love to just be all in for as much equity as I can get. I don't care about monthly income. I want to know that I have an exit 3 years from now or 5 years from now. Well, the next person may want nothing to do with an exit and all about just monthly cash flow for them to take care of their family. I think you have to consider that you're designing the role, not in terms of the roles and responsibilities, but in terms of how that person is going to win alongside you. And you obviously have to have parameters around it. It has to make good financial sense for the business. But there's a lot of levers that you can pull and push to make sure that it's a win-win.
Well, here's a very specific one. If you are tired of the fluff sometimes we give you and you want a very specific how to do it, one of the most common tools we use is a draw. If you're not familiar with the draw, and a lot of us who've been in sales of some sort have had a draw for the company. I mean, we went into a role that meant we were going to have a production, and that production requirement would give us certain income. Well, a draw could be with your operator is, hey, maybe your income needs are higher than what the business can serve right now. But as you scale the business, as you have success in the business, you can start meeting and exceeding what those income requirements are. Well, what if we created a floor, a draw, which allows us to say, let's just pay you $5,000 a month on a draw. And the way that I'm going to compensate you is say 10% of all the production in the company, whatever it is. I'm just making up numbers here. And let's just say for the first month, they only produced $10,000. So they only got paid at 10% of that's $1,000, but they had a floor of 5,000. The next month it went up to 20. So they created 2,000. Well, we paid them 5,000, right? So if you see the draw, the first month they were negative 4,000. The second month they were negative 3,000. Well, they start slowly scaling, and then by month 8, now they're producing, 100,000, and now they're getting $10,000 of that. Well, then they start paying back the negative balance too. They get to the point where they're even, and then they start to participate fully in whatever the percentages that you've built for them. Well, that's a model that creates stability for the person, probably leaving a company, leaving a business that they're already in to come work with you. And that's the risk most people have. People are like, how am I going to convince somebody to take this step? The right person, how am I going to get them to leave something that they're already doing well in to come work with us? Well, you have to create stability, but also you need to create an upside that's far exceeding what they're currently enjoying right now. And if you can't do that, it's not a good opportunity, right? You need to build a better opportunity. If you're looking at our passive income report right now, you see that we've created a number of different passive income streams. And one of the old sayings is passive income doesn't mean uninvolved. And people ask that question all the time. Hey, I just want the easy mailbox money. I just want to put money in and get money out. And if that's you, that's cool, right? There's opportunities, things that we've invested in that's on this sheet. Stallion, what are some of the items that we've invested in, right? We don't have a per se operator that we're managing, that we just get a check from.
So I would say the Bitcoin mining fund is something there's just a standardized syndication that's been built in there. Get into the Tribe Vest. That's just a loan that was actually created from that entity and that operator. We have things like multifamily syndication, mobile home park, oil and gas fund. Those are the things that just have a known syndication built in where you're receiving cash flow for your initial investment.
Yeah. So those are quote unquote easy button items, right? Now, I would argue that there's nothing completely uninvolved. Like you have to manage those syndicators, you have to manage those operators, and the fact that you're asking questions on the front end, you're doing due diligence to make sure that what they told you on their pretty spreadsheets and pitch decks are actually true. And then secondly, that you're getting the money that you expected, right? Like what's coming out was what you expected. And if not, you're asking questions as to why. And there's going to be ones that do better than others. And you're probably still evaluating now other people that you're going to be taking this cash flow that you're receiving. If you're doing it smartly, right? You're running this through your family banking system. You're using strategic IBC, and your coach is helping you build this passive income operating system so the money's flowing through there correctly. But that money's got to go back out. Well, if that's the case, then you need to be like evaluating people. So there's nothing truly uninvolved out there. The things that are uninvolved probably don't have great results. That's probably why you're listening to this podcast, because you were in an uninvolved situation. You were with Wall Street, and Wall Street wants you as uninvolved as possible. They want you to believe their 8 to 12% return numbers they preach, which if you look at statistics, those are not true. Those are false numbers, right? Like, again, there may be time frames where that is true, but if you look at it over whole times, that's not true, right? Those numbers are fake. They're averages. Averages and real numbers are not the same numbers. Well, they want you to be uninvolved. They want you to just put your head down, just go back to work. We'll handle this for you. We'll collect the fees off of it. We'll live fantastic lives that you wish you and hope that you will live once you get to quote unquote retirement. Also, that we know that these businesses, and for it to be passive for somebody means it has to be active for another. So how good of a job are you going to be doing monitoring who is doing the active involvement? And there's some of you that are in our community right now that have way more time than you get money. And to be honest, this is an opportunity for you to gain that experience in the MOTER acronym, the Redneck Motors, we call it, to get experience, gain the relationships so that you can bring opportunities to people who do have the money. They'll gladly trade that money for your opportunity. And you might be using a tool like TribeVest to start, becoming your own syndicator of deals and going out and finding the deals and raising the capital to come into it. And if that's you, good on you, right? But maybe you're just someone who just loves finding good opportunities and finding people. You have a knack, you have a relationship already built. Maybe you're part of mastermind groups. You're in the right circles. You're doing what Joey and I say when we say, hey, make sure you tell people you're an investor. You're no longer just a business owner. You're an investor first. And you start getting people coming to you, and you'll probably start to find these sort of things. Stallion, final thoughts as we wrap this up.
I think, man, if this has been enlightening to you, it's really not difficult. It's just a different way of thinking. What I think it's based out of is if you have drawn a line in the sand and said, I have to create passive income because fill in the blank. I want more time. I want to be present with my family. I want to have the legacy that I've desired to have. I want to be a better steward of all the things that God's given me. Then it forces you to say, I can no longer operate all of these opportunities. I have to find that operator. I have to find the who, not get involved in the how. And I just want to encourage you today, if you unlock that today, what a big difference it will be. I mean, you look at some of the numbers on our report, and this for the same investments, we've been able to 5, 6, 7x the cash flows in return for the same number. And that's because we unlocked this one skill set. So I hope that it helps you get to that next level as well.
Well, Tribe, another passive income report down. We gave you a different angle this time to think through this passive income report. How do you maybe find businesses that you can either buy or build, establish an operator in those businesses that can run them? Once they're running efficiently, you know how they're running, you understand how to improve them if need be. But ultimately, you start hiring yourself out of all of those roles. You become a big B business owner, as Robert Kiyosaki would say, and you start participating in a passive income. I had one of my friends today asked me this question, Stallion, I'll leave you with this. He said, how do I know if I'm a big B business owner? I said, well, it's easy. Whenever you can take a trip like Joey does to Europe, be gone forever, come back, and the business is still operating, is still growing, is still producing the income, and you didn't have to have a phone attached to your hip the whole time answering questions. That's when you know. And it's okay if you don't have that yet. What is it that you need to establish to do that? And every business that you own can become a big, big business. It can become a passive business. You don't necessarily have to go start a new one. You probably already have one. You just need some of those tools. Maybe you need a coach who can help you think through those things. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/free call. Jump on a call with one of our coaches. They're happy to help you think through the different strategies to help you win so you can become financially free in 2024. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.